Greetings, DMs, GMs, and players. This is the Insomniac GM, and today's video, I've been trying to figure out the format I wanted to go with this one in particular. I see a lot of great uses for this book, and frankly, I think I'm just going to break it down into parts. So the first part I'm going to break it down into is actually my favorite part, which is on page 218, which is Persuasive Magic. Pervasive Magic. Can't speak. So with Pervasive Magic, you can end up given a feat with the free feat archetype with free archetype rule in the Game Master's Guide. So at level 1, you can just give this feat to your players, and they can be a barbarian who now has spellcasting, or it can be a rogue with spellcasting. Your spellcasters get extra spellcasting, and they can dip into it further as they level up. There's also backgrounds that go for having a more magical setting, but the point of this whole rule set is if you want to have a setting that's much more magical, you can. You can now have your commoners walking around casting spells. You can now have the farmer's chickens down the road also casting spells. That also affects the monsters too. They're much more powerful. Now, it's divided up into each group of magic. You have Arcane, Divine, Occult, and Primal. Now, I grabbed a few as examples of how you use it. So, for instance, I mentioned the chicken. So, we decide, do we want to give the chicken Arcane, Divine, Occult, or Primal? Me, personally, I like the idea of giving it Primal. Because it's so low of a level, you would go through the first, they get a cantrip, and it tells you the DC's 15, attack is +7, that you can choose one of the two choices, which is Electric Arc or Produce Flame. And I think going with Produce Flame would be interesting, because the possibilities you could do with world building, like, say now your farmers have these hens that can produce flame. I'd like to believe they maybe, like, catch on fire for a brief minute and just go back to normal. And because of something like that, I could see, like, farmers putting, like, a hot water tank or something above the hen house and that. And just little tweaks like that would make things more interesting with your setting, if you want a high magic setting. I hope to one day run one myself. Now, the next monster I grabbed as an example is the Clay Golem from Bestiary 1, page 186. So, between all of these, I think Arcane makes the most sense, because if I remember correctly too, I think you need to know Arcane to know about constructs. I might be wrong on that one. But either way, I think Arcane makes the most sense, because you kind of need Arcane to summon them or create them. So you go through to see what their level is. Now, a Clay Golem is a level 10. So now their DC is 26. Their spell attack is 18. Now, you can choose one of these spells or lower. Now, I like the idea, like, there's so many different options, but you could go with, like, okay, the Clay Golem, like, creates a wall of fire blocking your opponents in, or they use haste and now they're much faster and can attack one extra time. You could even go spider climb. That would be interesting for, like, surprising the players. There's a lot of options with that. Now the last one I grabbed, and this one just blew my mind, was the Tarrasque. Now, I felt, if any, the Tarrasque would be primal, and I think the only correct choice to choose for it is Cataclysm, which causes a blizzard, an earthquake, acid rain, all of this all at once. So all of a sudden, here comes Godzilla and it lets out a roar, and now all this destruction and chaos starts happening, and you also got to deal with Godzilla. Like, I think that's perfect for the Tarrasque. But it just has many different options for depending on what spell you want to go with. For 5th edition, I'd have to tweak the numbers personally, because 5th edition doesn't have like a -1. But I'd just tweak them slightly. I'd probably go by if the creature's proficiency bonus is 2, 4, 6, you know, and divide them up into spells that way. Or you could even do the number of hit dies they have too. And I probably just use in the Dungeon Master's Guide, they have a list of spell DCs and to hit bonuses for your monsters, but depending on what their level is, I just use that for the spell level statistics. And you could even homebrew these spells yourselves into 5th edition to like kind of make it a little more interesting. You know, 5th edition doesn't have like a Cataclysm spell, but you can homebrew it in, and now it's a little bit more special because that's the only means of getting it. Or you can just replace the spells with the spells in 5th edition. Now, another thing is they have magical terrain, where one terrain you may go into a swamp, and that swamp is great with occult magic. So if you cast an occult spell, like if you're a bard, your spells now get a +1 bonus to will saves. +1 bonus to will saves. You also get bonuses to your deception, your diplomacy checks, etc., etc. Now, they do only have so many on here, but I feel it's a lot easier to craft. Like, I see occult, I see primal, I don't see arcane, and I don't see divine, but that doesn't mean you can't make one. And you could even make the opposite effects of this, like, you know, maybe the occult magic is bad in this area, you get a -1 instead. They give you examples of where, like, if you were running this in the Pathfinder setting, how the terrain and all that would affect each different location in the Pathfinder setting. For instance, Absalom Station, that's kind of like, sorry, I'm thinking Starfinder. Absalom and the Starstone in Pathfinder. So the city of Absalom is kind of your main Pathfinder like setting. It's usually where it's kind of more focused on. It's kind of like the Waterdeep of Pathfinder. I highly recommend just looking it up. Like, it's pretty interesting. I love it. But it explains, like, that because of the Starstone, it ends up creating a divine spell touch terrain. And it explains what it would do in that. Like, necromantic spells. I cannot talk today. Necromantic spells are much stronger in the area, which I think that's pretty interesting. The Milwaukee Expanse, which is Paizo's setting of what if instead of Pathfinder being set in like a European setting, it was set in like an African setting. That's what the Milwaukee Expanse is. They just released a setting book for that too, so you could easily just buy that too or look into it and place it over with that. But after that, we got other types of spellcasting. I love this book. Like, I love taking books. I love ripping rules from one and putting it into another and seeing how I can twist the game that way. Like, I think if I was to run this rule set in my Pathfinder games, I think I would focus more so on the low level. You know, like, I just want to see, like, I wouldn't want to run a high level game in it. I would want to run something more low level, just showing how the world is with this level of magic. You know, showing the chickens with spell casting. You could even do something like, you know, what about the flies that are just buzzing around? You know, what's up with the flies? You know, maybe like maybe the flies use like, or you know what, spiders. I think that would be cool if spiders like got the light cantrip. They can create light on their web, which attracts bugs, and you know, just little things like that. You know, so yeah. What would you guys do with this rule set? Would you use it? What would you do? What setting or what system would you use it in? I hope to talk about the rest of these books soon, or the rest of the rules in this book soon. And I hope you guys enjoyed this. Sorry for my not being able to speak abilities today. But until next time, take care.